Hello everyone! Today the Bookworms are going to be reading Freak the Mighty by Rodman Philbrick, Part 5. Chapter 10, Rats or Worse. One thing that happened over the summer, I grew even more. Grim takes a look at me one day and he goes, "All that walking you do, it must be stretching out your legs, and carrying poor Kevin around, that seems to be putting real muscle on you. He's not that heavy. And anyhow, it's not fair everybody always says poor Kevin just because he didn't grow." Grim gives me this long, sorrowful look, and then he clears his throat and says, "You're quite right. He is a rather remarkable boy. He's memorized almost the whole dictionary. You can ask him anything and he knows what it means." "You don't say," Grim says, and he has this smug look like maybe Freak is lying and a total goon like me would never get it. And I want to tell him he's wrong about Freak and the dictionary, but instead I just shut my face and go down under. Grim. He's okay sometimes, like when Tony D chased us into the pond, but most of the time he thinks he knows everything, which he doesn't, and if you don't believe me, look under Grim in the dictionary. It sure doesn't say a smart grown-up. No way. So I'm hanging out down under, listening to some of my thrash tapes on the fake Walkman I got last Christmas, when Freak pops up on the side of my bed. Because of the headphones and the volume being pumped up to the mega decibel, I never hear him come in. He's just suddenly there, like whoa, and I'll bet I jumped about a foot. Freak rolls his eyes and goes, "Ah, music, how it calms the savage beast. How'd you get here? Would you believe teleportation? No? Then I came down through the bulkhead door like always, and like always, I have a quest in mind. Right away I go, my feet hurt. We don't have to leave the neighborhood. Cool. What kind of quest is this?" Freak grins. "A treasure hunt. Except we don't really have to hunt because I already know where the treasure is." "Where?" "Underground," he says. "Specifically in the sewer." Yeah, right, I say, and sit back down on the bed. Freak is looking at me sideways. And I can tell he's not telling me everything, which he almost never does. Not all at once. "Truth," he says. "The treasure is hidden in a storm drain. This has been confirmed by visual observation." "Treasure in a storm drain? You mean like gold and diamond kind of stuff?" "Possibly," he says, acting mysterious. "Anything is possible. The deal is, we have to wait until night, so no one can see us messing with the storm drain." "Not just night," Freak says. "We need to do it at exactly 3 in the morning. Optimum darkness occurs at 0300 hours, he says, looking at the new watch his mom gave him. The kind that tells you what time it is in Tokyo, just in case you're wondering. We must dress in black and cover our faces with soot. For the next couple of hours, we try to find soot, but it turns out you need a fireplace for soot, or at least a chimney. So Freak finally decides that my idea about using regular dirt will have to do. "I've got black dungarees," I say, "but no black shirts. Can I just wear a dirty shirt?" Freak makes a face and says, "What a disgusting idea. Don't worry about the shirt. I'll get you one. Can you manage black socks?" You ever notice how long it takes for things to happen when you know they're supposed to happen? My fake Walkman has a built-in alarm, and I set it for 2 in the morning and wear the headphones to bed. But before you can wake up, you have to fall asleep. And I never do fall asleep because I keep waiting for the alarm to go off, which is, I know, typical butthead behavior. I'm lying awake in the dark on a hot summer night and I'm thinking, treasure in the sewer? What kind of quest is this, huh? Is Freak completely making this up or what? Meanwhile, there's this cricket making this creaky cricket noise that normally is okay, except when you're trying to fall asleep, then it's not okay, and you want a big can of Raid, send it to Disney World or Insect Heaven, or wherever it is that dead crickets go. Question: how come Freak knows about this stuff in the storm drain? Question: how come we have to put dirt on our faces? Question: how come 3 in the morning? Question: how long do crickets live? Finally, I give up on the first 3 and work on the cricket problem, but the little critter is pretty clever. It stops cricketing whenever I get too close, and I never do find it and squash it with my shoe, which I swear I am ready to do, even if crickets are supposed to be harmless. And then after almost forever, it gets to be 2:30, and I figure that's close enough. I'll go up and wait under Freak's window like I promised. There's no moon. The sky is dark and empty. And the backyards are so lonesome, it feels creepy and exciting. The truth is, I've never been out alone at this time of night. I only fall down a couple of times, which isn't bad considering how hard it is to see. When I get to Freak's bedroom window, he's waiting for me. "You sound like a car wreck," he says. "Here, you better put on this shirt so you don't glow in the dark." Out of the window, he hands me this silly-feeling shirt. "Hey, wait a minute. This is your mom's blouse." "It's black," he says. "That's what counts. The camouflage factor." "Forget it," I say, and give him back the Fair Gwen's blouse. Freak sighs. "Okay," he says. "Roll around on the ground and darken yourself." That's easy and better than wearing some dumb blouse. "What about you?" I ask when I'm covered with dirt enough so I want to sneeze. Freak goes, "Beware the Force, Earthling," and he stands up in the window, and I can see he's got a Darth Vader costume, except he's not wearing the mask part. He opens the window all the way, and I lift him out and put him on my shoulders. He goes, "Pledge to me your fealty," and I say, "Huh?" And he says, "Never mind. There is no time to look up fealty. Just promise you'll do what I say." I promise. "Go to the end of the block," he orders. "Attempt to conceal us in the shadows." That's easy, because the street is one big shadow. It's so dark I can hardly see my feet, or maybe I got some dirt in my eyes. But the point is no one sees us because there's no one to see us. You'd never know anybody lived here, let alone a whole block full of people. It's like we're on an empty planet or something. "Was the real Darth Vader as tall as this?" Freak asks, from where he's riding high up on my shoulders. "I thought it was just a movie." You know what I mean." "What's that?" That is a cat that runs out from under my feet so out of nowhere sudden that my heart goes wham. "Was it a black cat?" Freak wants to know. "Too dark to tell," I say. "Are we almost there?" Finally, I figure out it's hard to see because the Darth Vader cape is hanging in my eyes, but by then we're at the end of the block and the storm drain is right there by the curb. "See if you can pull it open," Freak says. He's standing with his arms folded and the expression on his face. Well, he really does look like a pint-sized Darth Vader. I hook my hands in the storm drain grate and give it a heave, but nothing happens. "I can't budge it." "Try again," he says with his arms folded like he's a lord of the universe. I try again, and it's like the grate is superglued or something. No way can I pull it up. Freak is tugging at my leg, and he goes, "Option 2 is now in effect." He reaches inside his little cape. Out comes a flashlight, one of those small kinds that look sort of like a cigarette lighter, and also a spool of kite string. "I devised a special retrieval device," Freak says. "Looks like a bent paperclip on a string," I say, and Freak tells me to shut up and follow orders. "You hold the string," he says, and then he gets down on his knees and shines the little flashlight through the grate. "Can you see it?" he asks. "Can you?" I look, but it's hard to see anything, and it smells like something died in the storm drain, which, come to think of it, it probably did. Rats or worse. "Down there," Freak says. "The beam is hitting it right now." That's just a piece of junk." "Wrong," Freak says, real fierce. "It looks like a piece of junk. It may very well contain fabulous wealth. Drop the line down and see if you can hook it." I'm thinking, boy, what a butthead, rolling in the dirt for this little Darth Vader so he can play pretend games in the middle of the night. But I do what he asks. I drop the hook down, and much to my surprise, it actually hooks onto something, and when I pull up on the kite string, I can see what it is. "A purse," I say. "Looks like a grotty old purse." "Careful," Freak says. "Pull it up to the grate so I can grab the strap." I bring it up an inch at a time, and Freak, manages to get his small hand down through the grate and grab hold of the soggy old purse, and then he almost drops it. I yank up on the kite string, and we both manage to squeeze the slimy purse up through the bars. "Phew, mission accomplished," Freak says. The old purse is torn and wet, and I don't want to touch it unless I have gloves on. "Gross," I say. "Somebody must have flushed this down a toilet." "No way," Freak says. "I saw one of Tony D's punks stuff it down there yesterday morning." "Yeah? They must have stole it." "No doubt," Freak says, and he opens the clasp and points his little light inside the purse. By now I know there isn't going to be any treasure, but still, this is pretty cool. Recovering stuff that Blades Grang ripped off some little old lady or whatever. "A wallet," Freak says, and he flips open this cheap-looking wallet, the kind that's made to hold credit cards. There's no money inside, but there is a plastic ID card, and on the plastic card is a lady's name. "Loretta Lee," Freak says. "I'll bet you anything she's a damsel in distress." which, as it turns out, is almost true. The real deal is that she's a damsel who causes distress, which we find out the very next day. Chapter 11. The Damsel of Distress. The address on the ID card is this place on the other side of the mill pond. They used to call it the New Tenements, but now everybody mostly calls it the New Testaments, which Graham told me has nothing to do with the Bible. People will make their jokes, she says. Call that place whatever you want, but you are not to set foot over there. Is that clear, Maxwell dear? It's not like I wanted to go into the Testaments, so it was really easy to keep that promise. And then the day after we pull that soggy purse out of the sewer, Freak explains how it's okay to break a promise if you're on a quest. There may even be a reward involved, he says. The lady won't have much money if she lives in the Testaments, I say. Poor people live there, and dope fiends. What we do is go down to the playground just cut over behind that little patch of trees, just in case anybody's looking, and then we can circle around behind the pond. Freak is riding up top, which he almost always does now. The way he doesn't have to wear his leg brace or carry his crutches, and besides, I like how it feels to have a really smart brain on my shoulders, helping me think. Freak is talking a mile a minute, more stuff about the round table and how important quests are, and why knights are bound up with oaths, which is not the same thing as swearing. And I'm trying to listen and not ask questions, because if I ask questions, he'll pull out his dictionary. When we get to the Testaments, though, Freak shuts right up. It's this big, falling apart place with a bunch of apartments, and it looks sad and smells like fish and sour milk. There are a lot of bikes and toys lying around, mostly bashed up and broken, and the little kids who live there look almost as busted up as the toys. When they see us coming, they make these screaming noises and run away, but you can tell they're not really scared. They just want to pretend like we're a monster or something. Eek, eek. Maybe we should reconsider this particular quest, Freak says. He's up there on my shoulders, and he's getting fidgety, squirming around, but we're already outside the apartment door, and I go, maybe she really needs that ID card, so it's my fault what happens next. The door opens before we even ring the bell, and this hand comes snaking out and reaches for the mailbox and finds this rolled-up newspaper and pulls it back inside. And there's something about the blind way that hand moves that's creepy. Get out of here, I'm thinking. Then, before I can get my feet moving fast enough to leave, this woman's voice is cussing us out. Iggy, she says. Iggy, come here and see this. Now she's standing in the doorway, this scrawny yellow-haired woman with small hard eyes and blurry red lips. She's wearing this ratty old bathrobe and she's smoking this cigarette and squinting at us and making a face. Iggy, she says out of the side of her mouth, come here and tell me, is the circus in town or what? Next thing, there's this big hairy dude in the doorway. He's got a huge beer gut and these giant arms all covered with blue tattoos, and he's got a beard that looks like it's made out of red barbed wire. Ain't the circus, he says, spitting a big gob on the step. This here is the carnival. Freak isn't saying anything, and I want to get out of here, so I go, sorry, wrong number. And I'm trying to back away and not fall over a tricycle when the hairy dude comes out the door and real quick and gets in my way. Not so fast, he says. Who sent you? I know the big one, the woman is saying. She's waving her cigarette around and squinting her eyes up, and you can tell she's thinking on something, worrying it like a dog with a bone. I seen him around somewhere. Don't he look familiar, Iggy? Don't he? Freak finally says, please excuse us. We have the wrong address. We were, trying to locate a Miss Loretta Lee. The tattoo dude hears that, and he starts to laugh. This fat sound way down in his big belly, and he goes, you hear that, Loretta? This an old flame of yours or what? Then he reaches up and pokes me in the chest hard enough to make me catch my breath, and he says, cat caught your tongue, kid? What is this, a Siamese twin act? All I can think to say is, oops, because we have the right address after all. The squinty woman in the robe is Loretta Lee, and even more important, Iggy is Iggy Lee, and I feel like a total butthead because I've heard of Iggy Lee. He's the boss of the Panheads, this bad news motorcycle gang. We found your purse, Freak blurts out, and he tosses down the purse and Iggy Lee catches it with one hand, and he gives Loretta this secret look, like he's going to have some fun here. You better come inside, he says, looking at Freak. You and Frankenstein. Sorry, Freak says, and his voice is chattery high. We'll have to decline your kind invitation because we have to leave now. Loretta flicks her cigarette butt at my feet and she says, Iggy says come inside. You better do it. So we go inside. I have to take Freak off my shoulder so we can get in the door, and that's when Loretta looks at me real hard and she says, I know that one. It's like a flash from the past, Iggy. You know him? Iggy isn't paying attention to her. He's pointing at this ratty chair and he says, Sit down. It makes me nervous looking up. Loretta comes around and she says, Don't be making Iggy nervous. Not this early in the day. Last dude made him nervous. They had to... Shut up, Loretta, Iggy says in this real quiet voice. I'm thinking, you're right. He does look familiar. I'm sitting in this chair, which feels like it might bust apart, and Freak is right next to me, and I can see he's trying to stand straight, but it's not easy because he's all bent up inside. Names, Iggy says. Freak clears his throat and tries to make his voice sound deep and more grown up. We're sorry to disturb you, but we have to go home now. It's a matter of some urgency. Iggy reaches out and he flicks his fingers at Freak's nose. Whack! I can tell it hurts, but Freak doesn't say anything. He just tenses up. Iggy goes, I ask a question. You better answer. Get it? Names. I want your names. Freak tells his name, and then mine. Iggy reaches down and pats him on the head. Very good, he says. Now that wasn't hard, was it? Next question. Where'd you get Loretta's purse? Freak tells him we found it in the storm drain. He doesn't mention us dressing up all in black or the Darth Vader costume or anything about the knights or quests. Next question, Iggy says. Where's the money? Loretta coughs on her new cigarette and says, But Iggy, there wasn't any money. And he goes, Shut up, Loretta. And she coughs again and shuts up. You can tell she's afraid of Iggy, the way she holds herself tight whenever she says anything. Freak goes, I've got $2 in change. You can have it, but we have to go home now. Iggy gives him this look like he's thinking seriously about throwing up, and he says, What is it with you? You've got to go home? We're having a nice little talk here. Don't spoil it. All of a sudden, Loretta jumps up and she goes, Iggy, I've got it. Kenny Kane. Remember Kenny Kane? For a second, I think he's going to hit her, and then he relaxes and really looks at me, and his eyes go wide and he nods and says, Sure, that's it. Kenny Kane. You're right. He's a ringer for old Killer Kane. Must be his kid, huh? Sure it is. Loretta looks real happy, and she finally figured it out, and she runs into the kitchen and kicks some stuff out of the way and pulls open the refrigerator, and we can hear her laughing and saying, I knew it! I just knew it! When she comes back in, she's got 2 cans of Bud, and she pops them both and gives one to Iggy. Breakfast of champions, she says. What a flash, huh? You remember that time, old Kenny? Shut up, Loretta, Iggy says, and then he chugs the Bud and squashes the can in his fist, and he drops it right on the floor, which is the first time I notice all the other crushed cans. They're everywhere. The whole place is like a trash can or a big ashtray or something. Meanwhile, Freak is giving me this look like he has no idea what's going on, and that look scares me more than Iggy Lee and all his tattoos. I've got him too, Loretta says, snapping her fingers. The midget or dwarf or whatever he is, he must be Gwen's kid. You remember Gwen? Stuck-up Gwen? No, Iggy says, and his eyes are burning into me. Never heard of Gwen. Loretta goes, Doesn't matter. What a flash this is. Kenny Kane. Time flies, huh, Ig? I can remember when these two were born, and then what was it? A couple years later, Kenny does his thing and he's in the yard, right? Doing time. Iggy says, That he is. I know a guy knows him inside. He gives me this creepy look and he says, You go up there to visit the old man. You tell him Iggy says hello, okay? I doubt he even knows his father, Ig. He was only a little kid when it happened, right? I don't say anything, and Freak is looking at me like he's never seen me before, and then Iggy says, Killer Kane, what a tough hombre he was. Loretta says, I heard he's seen the light in there. He's got religion. Is that true? I don't know. Iggy snorts and he says, He don't know. You don't know much, do you? I shake my head. Loretta says, He's some kind of retard, Ig. He don't even know how big and strong he is, I'll bet. She pokes Iggy or tickles him in this strange giggly voice. She says, Why don't you find out? Find out if he's strong as he looks. Iggy scowls and he goes, Give me a break, Loretta. He gives me this long look and then he hooks his thumb at the door and says, Showtime is over, boys. Get out of here, the both of you. Loretta says, But Iggy, we could have had some fun. You're the retard, Loretta, Iggy says. What if Killer Crane hears that I was messing with his kid? No, thank you. He's in for life, she says. What's the harm? Life ain't life. How many times I tell you that? Loretta is squinting at him and she goes, "Are you serious? He's getting out someday?" And Iggy looks at me and tells her to shut up again. Finally, we get to the door, and that's when Loretta wants to rub Freak on the head real hard with her knuckles. "This is for luck," she says to Iggy. It's good luck, rubbing a dwarf on the head. Freak is trying to duck away and he says, "I'm not a dwarf and I'm not good luck." So Loretta gives up on the rubbing his head and she stands up straight and folds her arms and says, "Hey, Midget Man, I know all about you. Your old man was a magician. Did you know that?" Freak is scuttling around behind me, keeping out of her way, but when she says that, I can tell he really wants to know about his father, if maybe he really was a magician. "Yeah," Loretta says, "right after he was born. He must be a magician, because as soon as he heard the magic words, birth defect, he disappeared." A second later, Iggy shoves us out the door. That's it for today, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed. For more read-alongs like these, don't forget to subscribe. If you enjoyed the book, give it a big thumbs up and share it with a friend. Don't forget to join us tomorrow for the next part of this book. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!